Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I know is top of mind for a lot of you folks out there, and that is Canadian childcare. Woof! It's a beast of a topic. And, here at Childcare.Center, we really are all about trying to make that journey a little bit easier.
It really can feel like a journey. You're trying to find that perfect spot for your little one. But where do you even begin, right?
Right.
Like you've got license centers and home-based care and preschools and
So many options, right?
yeah.
That's what we're here to break down today. We've got a whole stack of articles, a bunch of research, even some insights from our own platform. We're just going to dive in. And, finding the right childcare. It's like a maze, right? You want what's best for your kid, but how do you even know what best is with all of these options?
I think the thing is that best is really specific to your family and what's important to you. So for some families, it might be a structured academic preschool.
Right.
Whereas for other families, it's more of a flexible home away from home kind of vibe.
Mhm.
So there's a lot to consider.
And that's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
So first off, understanding your childcare landscape. And I'm not going to lie, even I was surprised by just how much variety there is out there. I mean, it's like a buffet of childcare, right?
Oh.
You've got your licensed centers, you've got family childcare homes, some are licensed, some aren't, right? And then you've got play-based programs, early learning centers, and then we get into the nursery schools, we even get into nannies and au pairs. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember too is that each of those options has its own set of pros and cons.
Absolutely.
So for instance, when you're talking about licensed care, you have the benefit of knowing that there are regulations and oversight in place,
Right,
but it often comes with a bit less flexibility.
right.
And then on the other hand, you've got unlicensed care, which might offer you more flexibility, but it often means that there's more due diligence required from the parents to make sure that it's the right fit for them.
Yeah, it's like choosing between a bustling playground and a cozy living room, right?
Yeah.
They're both great for kids, but the vibe is totally different.
Totally.
Speaking of vibes, let's talk about licensed care for a second. We were looking at some numbers, and one article we found mentioned that in 2022, Ontario alone had over 5,500 licensed childcare centers. And get this, almost 130 licensed home childcare agencies.
Wow.
That's a lot of options.
It is. It really highlights how massive this landscape is,
Absolutely.
even just within a single province. And when you start to factor in all of those other types of care,
Right.
I mean, it can feel almost endless.
It does. So how do we even begin to narrow down the search?
Hmm.
Because if I'm feeling overwhelmed just thinking about it,
Yeah.
I can only imagine what parents actually going through this must be feeling.
Yeah, so I think a really helpful place to start is to come up with your list of must-haves,
Right.
sort of like your childcare wish list, but instead of thinking about toys and games, you're really thinking about what are your family's absolute non-negotiables? Like, what are those top few things that you absolutely cannot compromise on?
Well, I got to imagine location is a big one, right?
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to be battling rush hour traffic with a cranky toddler every morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Location, proximity to your home or work can be a game changer. And I think while you're at it, thinking about location, it's also good to consider things like the safety of the neighborhood.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. Like, is it a place where you feel comfortable having your kid?
Yeah, for sure. And then, the operating hours. Do you need full-time care? Do you need part-time care? Do
Yeah.
you need something, in between? Because life happens,
Yeah.
right? And knowing that you have some flexibility, I feel like that can just relieve so much stress.
Oh, totally. And don't forget about things like statutory holidays, because sometimes childcare centers will be closed on those days.
Right.
So if you need care on stat holidays, you want to make sure that you're asking about that when you're calling around.
Right, for sure. And of course, the program itself. What kind of curriculum are they offering? Is it play-based? Is it academically focused? Is it a bit of both?
Yeah.
And then how does that align with your kid's developmental stage, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about finding a spot. It's about finding the right spot.
You're right. And I think while we're talking about programs, it's good to consider things like, outdoor time. How much time do the kids get to spend outside?
Yeah.
Is there a safe and engaging play area for them to enjoy? Things like that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One article I was reading mentioned screen time policies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask about. And speaking of questions to ask, we should also think about safety, right?
Yeah.
Especially things like child-to-staff ratios. Like,
Yeah.
for infants under 18 months in Ontario,
Okay.
the typical ratio is 3 staff members for every 10 babies.
Whoa. 3 staff members for every 10 babies under 18 months. My multitasking skills suddenly feel incredibly inadequate.
It's a lot, right?
I can barely handle one toddler at a time.
Exactly. But I think it highlights how important those ratios are, especially when you're dealing with those really crucial early years.
Right.
You want to make sure that your little one is getting the individual attention that they need.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've got location, we've got operating hours, the program features, and then safety. What else should we add to this list?
I think it's time to talk about the people who are going to be spending the most time with your little ones,
Okay.
the staff.
A staff, right. I mean, they really do become like an extension of your family. So you want to feel good about who those people are.
Totally. And you want them to be qualified, experienced caregivers,
Right.
who are passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
You ideally want people who have early childhood education credentials or at least some equivalent qualifications.
That makes sense. What about things like first aid and CPR certification? That seems pretty important when you're dealing with, little ones.
Oh, absolutely. And, don't be shy about asking about things like background checks for the staff.
Right.
Or what kind of professional development opportunities are provided for them. A center that invests in its staff is a center that cares about quality.
For sure. One article we came across mentioned that high staff turnover can be a red flag. Why is that so important?
I think a big reason why that's a red flag is because it can be really disruptive for the children.
Right.
It takes time for kids to build those trusting relationships. And when you've got caregivers coming and going all the time,
Right.
it can make it harder for them to feel secure. A stable team is often an indication of a positive work environment.
Right.
So it can be a good sign to ask about things like the average length of employment for staff.
Gotcha. Okay. So we've got location, operating hours, program features, safety measures, and then the qualifications and experience of the staff. Anything else?
I think we should also think about the learning environment itself.
Okay.
Right. So is the space clean? Is it well lit? Is it stimulating for the kids?
Right.
Does it have designated areas for different activities?
Right.
Things like that. And then also thinking about, what kind of resources are available?
Right.
Are there lots of age-appropriate toys and books and art supplies?
All fantastic points.
Yeah.
And speaking of the environment, we have to talk about outdoor play. I know we touched on this a little bit earlier,
Oh, for sure.
but I feel like it's worth diving into a little deeper.
Yeah, I agree. Having a safe and well-maintained outdoor space is so important for children's development.
Absolutely.
It lets them run, jump, climb, explore,
Yeah.
get some fresh air and sunshine.
I'm just picturing my ideal daycare now. And it's bright and cheerful, filled with happy children, engaging activities,
Yeah.
and maybe a giant ball pit for grown-ups.
Oh, now you're talking. But seriously, I think all of these are really important things to consider when you're evaluating a childcare provider.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered the different types of care, the must-haves, the learning environment. But now I think we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is the cost.
Right, childcare costs. It's a big one.
It's a big one.
And we know that it's no secret that it can be a huge financial hurdle for families.
It is, and I know it varies across the country.
Yeah.
But how expensive are we actually talking? Like, what kind of numbers are we dealing with?
Yeah, well, remember that stat we talked about before about the average childcare subsidy in Ontario
Yeah.
being around $10,000 per child annually in 2022? So that sort of gives you an idea of the kind of scale we're talking about.
Wow, $10,000
Oh.
per child.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a serious chunk of change. So what can families do to actually make childcare more affordable? I mean, are there any government programs or subsidies available to help offset those costs?
There are definitely some resources out there. So, for example, one of the big ones is the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare System, or as most people call it, CWLCC. It's a huge initiative, and the goal is to bring fees down to an average of $10 a day across Canada
Wow.
by 2026.
$10 a day. Man, that sounds almost too good to be true.
I know, right? It's definitely an ambitious goal,
It is.
but it is making a difference.
Okay.
So as of November 2023, the average fees for licensed care for kids under 6
Okay.
have already been reduced by 50% across Canada compared to 2020.
That's incredible.
So it's making some progress.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so is every province and territory on board with this?
Well, not every province or territory has fully implemented the program yet,
Okay.
but many of them are, and many are making progress.
Okay.
So it's worth checking in with your specific province or territory to see what's available where you are.
Absolutely. So besides this Sewell LCC, are there any other financial assistance programs that parents should maybe be aware of?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that many provinces and territories offer childcare subsidies,
Yes.
and these are often based on your income and your family size. So that can really help offset some of the costs.
And don't forget about the tax benefits, too. There's the child care expense deduction,
Mm-hmm.
which allows you to claim eligible child care expenses on your tax return.
Oh, right.
Mm,
Absolutely. Make sure you're keeping all of your receipts
yes,
so you can claim everything that you're entitled to.
right. Because every little bit helps.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Speaking of keeping track of expenses, what about those like sneaky little additional costs that can pop up?
Mm-hmm.
Like registration fees, activity fees, and those dreaded like late pickup charges.
Yeah. You have to factor those in too, right? It's so easy to be focused on those big picture costs
Right,
and overlook some of those smaller but still significant expenses.
for sure. So I guess when it comes to childcare finances, we've got the Seawell LCC, we've got the provincial territorial subsidies, we've got tax benefits, and then we have to remember those sneaky additional costs. I mean, it's a lot to juggle,
Yeah.
but at least we're starting to get a clearer picture of like what's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of getting a clearer picture, I think it's time to move on to actually finding these amazing childcare providers.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll be delving into the nitty-gritty of actually finding that perfect childcare fit for your family. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we covered a ton of ground. We talked about all the different types of childcare out there. We made our little list of must-haves. We even tackled the cost, which can be a little scary sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of information to process. But I think amidst all of that, the main takeaway is that there are resources and there are strategies to help you navigate this whole childcare journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But how do you actually find these amazing childcare providers? I mean, sometimes it feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right?
It can. And one of the most important things is to start your search early. And I mean, really early, especially if you're looking for infant care.
Okay, so like how early are we talking? Like if I make space, should I be looking now?
Yeah, I would say so. Infant spots tend to be in very high demand.
Yeah.
And wait lists can be shockingly long. We're talking a year or more in some major Canadian cities.
Okay, a year, so longer than some college applications.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting early is crucial, especially for infant care. But once you've, kind of wrapped your head around that, where do you actually go to find these providers? Like, what are the best resources?
Well, I think the good news is we live in a digital age. So one of the first places you can check is actually your provincial or territorial government website.
Right.
Many of them have online directories of licensed childcare providers.
Oh, okay. I mean, those government websites can be gold mines of information once you figure out where to look, right?
Exactly. And while you're on those websites, I would also suggest keeping an eye out for childcare resource and referral centers. Sometimes they're called CCRRs.
Right.
And they're basically like childcare matchmakers.
Okay.
So they connect families with local options.
I love that. Childcare matchmakers.
Yeah. And they offer a ton of helpful information and resources too.
Awesome. Okay, so government websites, CCRRs. What about like online directories and platforms? I'm guessing those are a good bet too.
Oh, absolutely. So websites like Today's Parent, even Yelp, Google reviews
Right.
can be really helpful because they give you those insights from other parents.
Right. Who have actually been there, done that. Right.
Exactly. So you're getting those firsthand experiences. But it's always good to remember that reviews are subjective. So take everything with a grain of salt.
Right. Right. It's like reading restaurant reviews. Right?
Yeah.
You never know if that one-star review was because the food was actually bad
Yep.
or if someone was just having a rough day, right?
Totally. So get a variety of perspectives and do your own research. And speaking of perspective, don't underestimate the power of local networks. Talk to other parents, friends, colleagues. That neighbor who just seems to know everything about the community.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, those firsthand experiences and recommendations can be so valuable. And plus, it's just a great way to connect with other parents who are going through the same thing. Right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's actually one of the things that we're trying to do here at Childcare.Center. We're building a platform where parents can easily find information, compare their options, and connect with providers.
Absolutely. And speaking of Childcare.Center, I keep hearing whispers about this, like top secret AI-powered search engine in the works. Anything you can share about that?
Yeah, our team is definitely working very hard behind the scenes developing this really cool tool.
Okay.
It's still under wraps right now, but we're hoping to have it ready later this year. So think of it as like your personalized childcare concierge.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to analyze your specific needs and preferences
Right.
to suggest like the very best providers for your family.
So no more endless scrolling through lists of places that aren't really a good fit.
Hopefully not.
Oh, amazing. I'm so excited about that. But in the meantime, while we're all waiting for this AI marvel to launch, what are some, practical tips for just making the most of our search right now?
Okay, so let's imagine you've got your list of potential providers, you've done some of the online research,
Uh-huh.
and you're ready to start narrowing things down. What's the next step?
Daycare visits. But before we even get to the daycare visits, are there any red flags that we should be looking for? Like, are there any warning signs that maybe this isn't the right place?
Yes, definitely. So, for example, if a provider seems hesitant to answer your questions or be really transparent about their program, that can be a big red flag.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like dating, right?
Yeah.
If someone's being evasive or secretive, it's probably best to just move on.
Exactly. And even things like if you're having trouble scheduling a visit, a good provider should be really welcoming and accommodating to potential families.
Right, absolutely. What about high staff turnover? We talked about that a little earlier. Yeah, that's definitely something to pay attention to. It could be a symptom of some deeper issues within the center.
Okay.
And always, always, always check that their licenses are up to date. That's super important.
Out-of-date licenses. Yeah, that sounds a little sketchy.
Yeah, it's all about making sure that they meet all the required safety and quality standards. And at the end of the day, if something just feels off, don't ignore it.
Right.
Trust your gut.
Red flag radar activated.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got our red flags in mind. Now let's talk about those daycare visits. What should we actually be looking for when we, walk through the door?
I think the visit is your chance to really experience the environment firsthand.
Okay.
You can meet the staff and get a feel for the overall vibe of the place. So pay attention to how the staff interacts with the children. Are they warm? Are they engaging? Are they responsive?
Right.
Do they seem genuinely happy to be there?
Right. It's like that saying, choose a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
If the staff love what they do, it shows.
Yeah, and while you're observing the staff, also watch the children, right?
Mhm.
Pay attention to their behavior. Do they seem happy and engaged?
Right.
Well cared for?
Uh-huh.
Are they interacting positively with each other and with the staff? Those nonverbal cues can be so revealing.
Absolutely. And speaking of nonverbal cues, what about the overall environment itself? Like, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, so is it clean? Is it organized?
Mhm.
Is it stimulating for the children? Are there age-appropriate activities and materials available?
Mm.
Does the space just feel safe and welcoming? And don't forget to check out the outdoor play area if there is one.
Right.
Is it secure? Is it well-maintained? Is it equipped for different age groups?
Okay, so now I'm picturing my dream daycare again. It's bright, cheerful, filled with happy children, engaging activities. And there's that giant ball pit for the grown-ups.
I love it.
Mm.
But seriously, all of these are really important things to keep in mind when you're making your decision. And remember, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yep.
Come prepared with a list of questions that address your top priorities.
Okay, so give us some examples. Like, what kind of questions should we be asking?
So think about what matters most to you. You might want to ask about their approach to discipline or how they communicate with parents, what
Right.
their daily routines look like, what kind of support they provide for children with special needs. If your child has allergies or dietary restrictions,
Right.
those are definitely things you want to ask about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about parent involvement? Like, are parents welcome to visit or volunteer in the classroom?
That's a great question. Some centers really encourage that, while others have a more structured approach. It really depends on their specific philosophy and policies.
Okay.
And while we're on the topic of being upfront, don't be shy about asking about things like additional costs, registration fees, activity fees, late pickup charges, all of that.
Right.
Transparency is key.
Absolutely. So we've observed the interactions, we've assessed the environment, we've grilled the staff with our very well-prepared questions. Is there anything else we should be doing during these visits?
Yeah, if it's possible, bring your child along.
Oh, okay.
It's really the best way to see how they respond to the environment and the staff.
Hmm.
Do they seem comfortable? Do they seem engaged? Do they interact with the other children?
That's a great tip because it's one thing to kind of imagine your kid in a certain daycare.
Yeah.
but actually seeing them in that environment can be a total game changer.
Right. You can really get a feel for whether it's going to be a good fit for their personality and temperament.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's say we've done our research, we visited a few places, and we're starting to feel good about a couple of our options. What's next? Like, how do we actually make the decision?
Decision time.
Okay.
But before you lock anything in, there are a couple more things to consider.
All right, lay it on me.
Okay, first, compare your top choices side by side. Remember that list of must-haves we were talking about?
Yeah.
Use that to weigh the pros and cons of each provider.
Okay, so it's like making a childcare spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Column A, daycare name. Column B, pros. Column C, cons. Column D, gut feeling.
I love it. Organization is key when you're making these big decisions.
Yes.
And then once you've actually made your decision, get everything in writing. So a clear agreement or contract, outlining the fees, the hours of operation, their policies, all of the services they provide, can really help prevent surprises or misunderstandings down the road.
Okay, so kind of like the fine print, but for childcare.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And if the daycare offers a trial period or like a gradual entry program, I would say take advantage of that because it can really help your child adjust to that new environment more smoothly.
Absolutely. Speaking of adjusting, do you have any tips for just making that transition a little bit easier for those little ones? Because, starting daycare can be a really big change for everybody involved.
Yeah, it can. And that's actually what we're going to dive into in part 3 of our deep dive. So stay tuned for the final installment of our childcare adventure.
All right, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've done it. We've explored the Canadian childcare landscape. We've made our list of must-haves. We even survived those daycare visits. But now comes, I think, the really challenging part. And that is, how do we actually help our little ones transition smoothly into their new childcare home?
Yeah, because it's tough on everyone involved.
It is.
Right.
It is like the parents, the kids.
Yeah.
It's a big adjustment.
Absolutely. Separation anxiety is real.
Totally.
And it's completely normal for both kids and parents to be feeling all of those emotions. So how do we make this transition, maybe a little less tearful, a little less stressful, and a little bit more fun for everybody involved? I think one of the biggest things is preparation. So start talking about childcare well before the big day. Read books about going to daycare, tell stories. You can even role play, what a typical day at daycare might look like.
Oh, I love that idea. You can even make it a game. Like pretend to be the daycare teacher. Pack an imaginary lunchbox. The whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
I mean, just take the scariness out of the unknown, right?
Totally. Make it fun and engaging. And if the daycare allows it, see if you can schedule a few visits before your child officially starts.
Okay.
Because familiarity can do wonders for easing those first day jitters.
Yeah, kind of like a little sneak peek behind the curtain, right?
Exactly.
You get to meet the teachers, see the classroom, maybe even make a friend or two.
Yeah.
Speaking of friends, remember those parent groups and those local networks we were talking about?
Yeah.
I feel like connecting with other parents whose kids already go to the daycare can be such a great resource.
Huge, huge resource.
We've been there, done that, and lived to tell the tale, right?
Totally.
So they can offer those practical tips like what to pack in their bag or how to handle drop-off. Just those little things that can make a world of difference.
Yeah, all of those little details, for sure.
Hey, so we've done all the prep work, we've done our visits, we've talked to our parent network. It's the big day. Any tips for a smooth drop-off? Because let's be real, that moment can be so tough on both parents and kids.
It can be. My biggest tip is keep it short and sweet.
Okay.
So lingering goodbyes can actually make that separation anxiety worse.
Okay.
So give them a big hug and a kiss, reassure them that you'll be back, and then leave confidently.
That's easier said than done.
I know it is. It is.
I can picture myself clinging to my kid's leg as they're trying to pry me off,
It's hard. But honestly, that confident and positive attitude will do wonders. And don't be afraid to lean on the staff. They're pros at handling this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've probably seen hundreds of tearful goodbyes at this point, right? Right. They know exactly what to do. Speaking of the staff, I feel like establishing open communication from day one is so important, right?
Oh, absolutely. Check in with the staff regularly. Ask how your kid's doing. Share any concerns you might have. Remember, you and the daycare staff, you're a team.
Right.
You're working together to support your little one.
It's all about teamwork. And speaking of working together, one of the things that we found at Childcare.Center is sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to get complete information from all of the providers that are on our platform. We encourage them to fill out those profiles, to add all those details. But it can be, it's a work in progress, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we're constantly trying to improve the platform, making it as comprehensive and as user-friendly as possible. We want parents to have all the information they need, right there.
Absolutely. And that's where I think our fancy new AI search engine is going to come in, right?
Hmm.
I'm so excited about this.
Me too. I'm really excited about this tool.
It's going to personalize the search in a way that's just never been done before.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine being able to filter by things like, specific dietary needs or their educational philosophies, or even just like the type of outdoor play equipment. I mean, it's going to make finding the perfect fit so much easier.
Totally. It's going to be a game changer. But even with the best tech in the world, it's important to remember that transitioning to daycare is a process.
It is.
It's not like an overnight switch. It's okay if your child takes a little bit of time to adjust.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge adjustment.
It is.
They're in a whole new environment. There are new routines, new faces. I mean, patience and understanding are key.
Totally. And I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful to celebrate those small milestones.
Okay, yeah.
Like, did they try a new food at daycare? Did they make a new friend? Just acknowledge their efforts and celebrate their progress.
Yeah, those little wins can make a big difference.
They really can. It's all about building their confidence and helping them feel secure and happy in their new environment.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best things that you can do as a parent is to create a consistent routine at home.
Yes.
Try to align your home schedule
Yeah.
with the daycare schedule as much as possible. So,
Yeah.
consistent meal times, nap times, bedtimes, just create that stability and predictability.
Yes, it's like creating a really comforting rhythm to their day, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether they're at home or they're at daycare.
Right. Consistency is key. And you know what else is key?
What's that?
Self-care for the parents.
Yes.
Because this transition, it can be emotionally draining. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself too.
Absolutely. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Right.
If you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, it's going to be so much harder to support your little one. So take some time for yourself, do things that you enjoy, and honestly, don't hesitate to reach out for support if you need it, from friends or family or even a therapist.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important message. So to kind of wrap things up, I think the key ingredients for a smooth childcare transition are preparation, communication, patience, a good dose of self-care, and maybe a giant ball pit for those moments when things just get a little too stressful.
Oh, yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, just remember that you're not alone in this journey. Childcare.Center, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely. So check out our website. We've got tons of resources, articles, tips, a whole directory of childcare providers. And don't forget to check back later this year for that super cool AI-powered search engine. It's going to be awesome. I think it's really going to revolutionize the way parents find childcare in Canada.
I think so too.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we hope that this deep dive has given you the knowledge, the resources, and maybe even just a little bit of confidence to navigate this whole crazy world of Canadian childcare.
Yeah, for sure. It's a journey, but it's a rewarding one.
Absolutely, it is. So remember, finding the right childcare, it is a journey. Trust your instincts, do your research, and most importantly, listen to your heart. You've got this. And Childcare.Center is here to cheer you on every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.